Welcome to Module 9, IT Procurement. In this module, we'll explore strategic planning for information systems, systems acquisition, and how to develop documents such as the business case and request for proposal. This section ties in closely with the systems development lifecycle, which you'll learn about in Module 10. There are many roles for the HIM professional in IT procurement and the development of systems. We're experts in data quality and privacy, as well as the security of patient information. This gives us a leading role to play in the development, assessment, and procurement of technology solutions. We're uniquely positioned with knowledge of both health information and health systems. Our importance continues to expand along with the need for both external and internal information sharing. In order to share information effectively, you need to have a good understanding of it. This is something HIMs excel at. HIMs are often hired into project positions and as business analysts, or BAs. BAs are found both in healthcare facilities and in vendor organizations working on the development of IT hardware, software, and solutions. BAs work with end users and vendors to evaluate the solution and identify gaps in meeting business, clinical, and regulatory requirements, and also to improve design. They can also work with privacy officers to develop security matrices for system access levels, reporting, and auditing requirements. BAs are frequently employed in system testing, maintenance, and operations to ensure data flow is correct and in the proper clinical context. Healthcare is a dynamic environment that is constantly in a state of change. Technology advancements continue to accelerate in pace. This means that there are many opportunities for improvements in healthcare, particularly in information management, information technology, or IMIT. In the past, IMIT has primarily been the domain of the IT department. However, as the complexity of systems grows, there's a need for specialized knowledge of health information, health standards, and interoperability. This knowledge can be beyond the scope of the typical IT department. HIMs do have knowledge of technology infrastructure, and, if that is an area of interest, is one that you can use to grow your career. HIMs can provide input on current and future trends and needs, especially as they relate to the areas of collection, storage, retrieval, and transmission of health information. There are many opportunities to explore new and exciting technologies and to participate in proposals for their adoption and implementation. Strategic planning for information systems is the foundation upon which system acquisition and development is built. Conducting strategic planning specifically for information systems helps organizations to determine where they are going and how they're going to get there. It's a way to develop a blueprint or a roadmap for the future. This activity results in what is often referred to as the IMIT plan. The focus of the plan is on developing a strategy for information and information system needs. When developing the plan, the goal should be on implementation of effective systems that optimize administrative and clinical performance. IMIT plans, although they are strategic plans in their own right, must also tie back to the larger strategic plans, vision, and mission that the organization has developed. When developing the IMIT plan, there are a number of steps which are followed. Overall, these steps help to ensure that the current environment is understood, that a solid vision for the future needs is established, that any gaps between the current state and the vision are identified, that goals and objectives are formally developed and documented, and that the plan is developed, documented, and communicated. The 7 steps to developing an IMIT plan are: Step 1, develop mission, vision, and values. Step 2, SWOT analysis. Step 3, define key issues. Step 4, determine priorities. Step 5, develop goals and objectives. Step 6, develop action plans. And Step 7, develop metrics and measures. Step 1, develop mission, vision, values. In this step, you define the organization's vision for information management and technology. This vision must align with the overall vision of the organization. For example, if the organization's direction is to make all of the various systems in the hospital interoperable with shared databases, you wouldn't want to develop a standalone system. In this stage, you typically conduct an environmental scan. This is a critical review of the organization's internal and external environments. Information gathered from the scan is then analyzed and used to inform the purpose and scope. When doing internal scans, some of the areas to look at are the current state of your technical environment, variability in multi-site facilities, processes and their variance between organizations, stakeholder involvement, and financial support, especially the funding available in your organization. When doing external scans, some of the areas to consider are political environment, impact of outside organizations such as the Ministry of Health and CIHI, the economic environment as to whether funding is available from the government, socio-demographic environment, and laws and regulations. Step 2 is SWOT analysis. This step helps you understand the impact that external and internal environments will have on the information technology and planning process. This is most often done through a SWOT analysis. SWOT stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. When looking at the SWOT grid, evaluate each item according to pairs of criteria. An item which is helpful to achieving the objective is a strength if it is of internal origin. This is something that is currently in place and which you may wish to enhance. An item which is helpful to achieving the objective is an opportunity if it is external to the organization. These items may be pursued to realize value. An item which is harmful to achieving the objective is a weakness if it is of internal origin. This may be an area where you know your organization is currently deficient. It's an area where there's good potential for development. An item which is harmful to achieving the objective and is of external origin is a threat. These are often areas over which you have no control and which could have a negative impact to your organization. Usually, focus groups and key stakeholders participate in the analysis. Organizations may focus on one or more identified opportunities as a strategic IM/IT initiative in their plan. Step 3 is to define key issues. In this step, you utilize the output of the SWOT analysis to identify which opportunities or initiatives will be the key ones you focus on for your IM/IT plan. While the issues may include development or acquisition of new systems or technologies, this is not always the case. Sometimes you will identify services that can be discontinued, often at a cost savings, or which may be offered in alternate ways, often more efficient in terms of technology, usability, or cost. Step 4 is to determine priorities. It would be great if we had unlimited funds and resources to pursue all of the initiatives we wanted. However, that isn't reality. Organizations can't take on every initiative, so they must set priorities to determine which ones will give them the most benefit for the limited pool of funds and resources available. There are many methods to determine priorities, most of which are based on an identified set of criteria. Once priorities have been established, it's important that they are communicated to the entire organization so that everyone understands and supports the rationale for the decisions. We're going to look at 3 common methods for determining priorities. The first is analysis and voting by key stakeholders. In this method, all key stakeholders are informed of the strategic options. Each stakeholder analyzes, ranks, and prioritizes the initiative based on what they think is the most important to the organization. This is a very subjective way of developing priorities, as it involves feelings more than measures. The second method for prioritization is the weight system. Criteria or definitions of initiatives are developed based on what is important to the organization. Criteria are assigned a weighted score, which is based on how important that criterion is relative to all the other criteria. When scores are tallied, the initiatives with the highest scores are the ones that should be implemented. In the example shown here, the stakeholders have decided on 3 drivers as being the most important to them: attract new users, retain existing users, and lower support costs. You can then look at each feature and rate the feature's value on a scale of 1 to 5, with 1 being low and 5 being high. You'll see that Attract New Users has a rating of 50, while retaining existing users is less important with a weight of 30. The weights for all of your different items should add up to 100. Features are then rated on a scale of 1 to 5, with 1 being low and 5 being high. This allows generation of a numeric score for the feature. For the feature Improve Photo Viewing Capability, it's hard to see the numbers, but they are 5, 5, 5. You multiply 5 times 5 for Attract New Users, 5 times 3 for Retain Existing Users, and 5 times 2 for Lower Support Cost. Adding the 3 together give a total, and then you convert it to be out of 100. Do this for all the rows. You end up with a priority score in the rightmost column, which indicates where you should focus your dollars and resources. The third method we'll look at for developing priorities is the priority matrix. With the matrix, you develop a chart that rates the importance from low to high and the complexity of implementation from low to high. You rate all of your initiatives and place them on the matrix. Where they fall on the grid tells you what priority they have. First priority are high importance and low complexity. These give you good gains for easy implementation. The second priority have high importance but are more complex to implement and will have gains but may take more time and resources. The third priority have low importance and low in complexity. These are easy to implement, but you need to verify if it's truly something the organization wants to do. The fourth priority, low importance but high complexity, will give little gain for a lot of cost and effort and generally are not chosen for implementation. Step 5 is to develop goals and objectives. Once strategic priorities are confirmed, goals and objectives can be developed. These must support the execution of the strategic priorities. Goals are the target or what is hoped to be achieved. Objectives outline how the strategic priority will be accomplished. Objectives should follow SMART guidelines: specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-bound. So in summary, goals are what you want to do, objectives are how you get there. A goal may be to implement a new document scanner. An associated objective would be to procure a Fujitsu ScanSnap system for a maximum of $500 by October 16, 2016. The goal of implementing a new document scanner would have a number of objectives associated with it. Others might include testing the system, implementing the system, and training the users. Step 6 is develop action plans. An action plan must be developed for each objective. Resources, financial, people, or equipment, are assigned to objectives in order that they can be accomplished. Objectives have established timelines for delivery. Depending on the complexity of the goal, objectives may be tracked simply in a spreadsheet, or for more complex goals, a proper project is developed with a project manager who will track all of the objectives in a more sophisticated manner, such as Microsoft Project. Each objective requires a person or team led by one person, usually a project manager, so that there is accountability for the final delivery of the objective. This is the most challenging component, as it requires motivating people to deliver and achieve the objective according to the timeline. Step 7 is to develop metrics and measures. Metrics and measures are developed to evaluate the achievement of objectives. Once the strategic plan has been accepted and implemented, it must continually be assessed in order to determine if the IMIT plan was successful and what the impact was to the overall organizational strategy. Measures represent information used to establish a common understanding of status, condition, or position of something. They are the amount or degree to which something fits the objective. Metrics provide measuring units to depict values, thresholds, constraints, scope, duration, maximum and minimum, averages, etc. Metrics are a precise description of what is being measured, including numerator, denominator, inclusions, and exclusions. They are a standard of measurement. Evaluation metrics must be linked back to the original vision, mission, goals, and objectives. They are designed to identify if the strategy has achieved the original intent and should be set prior to the execution of the IMIT plan. They are standards of measurement that are derived from measures. Typical metrics include financial outcomes, process improvements, improved service delivery, increased customer satisfaction, and staff impacts. As an example, we use to measure investment in the marketing and the number of customers acquired to calculate the total cost to gain a new customer. That's a metric. It is a derivative of the two measures. Before we go on, I need to briefly mention the Systems Development Lifecycle, or SDLC. IT procurement, which we are discussing today, is part of the larger systems development lifecycle. We'll be looking at the full SDLC in an upcoming lecture, but for now, as we progress, keep in mind that these activities are part of a bigger picture. There will come a point in your system's life cycle when you look at that system and realize what used to be shiny, new, and cutting edge has become old, clunky, and obsolete. Maybe you tried to extend its life by tacking on new improvements along the way, but ultimately, it becomes time to move on to a new system. When you've decided that it's time for a new system and have done some investigation on potential technologies or systems that will be what is implemented through your project, the next step is to move to the business case. What is a business case? A business case captures the business justification for initiating the task or project. It's a fact of any organization, be they business corporations or healthcare institutions, that there is only so much money to go around. As part of your organization's planning, a certain amount of funds will have been budgeted for projects. However, the executive must remain guardians of those funds and only approve them for use for the projects with the highest priorities and those with the strongest value. A business case is built to show the executive the value in your proposal. When do you use a business case? Whenever the organization plans to commit finances or resources to a task or project. The business case is a way of demonstrating that what you are proposing fills a business need that is within the organization's strategic plan and budget. Organizations use the business case in a variety of ways. It's used to demonstrate that there's a business need for a given action. While it would be nice to be able to go to management and say that you need the nicest, newest, shiniest PCs for your department, unless you can find a way to justify them, it's unlikely to happen. Business cases are also a way to confirm that projects are feasible before significant spending. In this situation, the business case will likely be significantly more in-depth than a business case for a smaller procurement. When evaluating a business case for a project, there may be many more aspects that must be considered. By looking at all of these objectively and then documenting them clearly at a high level, you can prove to the executive the value of your business case. Business cases also allow you to assess, compare, and contrast the costs and benefits, both monetary and non-monetary, of choosing one product or course of action over another. There are various evaluation methods used in business cases to help evaluate actions against each other, taking into account various requirements and how important they are to the organization. Generally, when you are bringing in a new system or revising an existing one, you will need to complete a formal business case. The organization will be required to commit resources to the project, and it's important for the executive to understand exactly what the financial impacts are, how much the one-time costs are, how much the ongoing costs are, any savings that will be realized, and what their ROI or return on investment is. ROI is one of a number of financial measures, along with IRR, or internal rate of return, NPV, or net present value, and payback period, which may be used when evaluating the financial portion of the business case. Business cases are usually targeted at the senior management or executive level, as those are the people who can make decisions on committing funds to projects. The business case is often presented as a PowerPoint and must be professional in tone. This is usually accompanied by a business case document, which has detail on the more summary level information given in the presentation. There are many different ways to do a business case, and each organization will have their own approach. We're going to look at what a few organizations suggest as content for the business case. In general, they will contain a justification for the project, what you want to do, and information on how it aligns with the strategic direction of the organization, what the anticipated benefits are, what the return on investment or other financial measures will be, capital dollars, expenses, and anticipated annual operating costs must be forecast. Capital expenditures are items that cost more than a specified amount and which contribute to the value of the company over a number of years. This allows you to spread out the expenditures into years where you will realize the return on them. Examples of these types of expenditures are a building or a data warehouse. Expenses, on the other hand, are items whose dollar value falls under a specified amount and whose expenditure is calculated in the current year. An example would be buying a new keyboard or a mouse. Anticipated annual operating costs are related to the cost of maintaining and running the assets. Examples would be supplies such as toner or a contract for maintenance. The business case also continues the lifespan and depreciation costs of the equipment. Lifespan is how long you anticipate keeping the equipment before replacing it. For a PC, this would typically be in the 3 to 5 year range. Depreciation is a measure of the reduction of value of the asset with the passage of time. An example we're very familiar with is that it's often said that as soon as you drive a new car off the lot, it depreciates by 25%, so that a $20,000 car would then be worth $15,000. All of the information provided in the business case will be evaluated by the senior management and the executive, leading to a decision as to whether it will be approved. Once approved, you can move forward into procurement activities. Let's take a look at the first approach to creating a business case that we're going to examine. This approach comes from CIMA's Professional Practice Brief 0020.09, Writing a Business Case. Please note if you go out to look at this practice brief that it is an older one and most of the links in it have expired. CIMA's approach talks to the 5 P's of a business case. They are purpose, people, proposal, process, and payoff. When we look at these, keep in mind that there is no one right way to build a business case. The organization you work for will have guidelines and will let you know what they expect to see in a business case. Make sure you provide all of the required information so that you don't miss out on approvals. While CIMA documents the 5 P's, they outline building the business case using different terms that relate back to the 5 P's. This is an approximate map of the 5 P's to CIMA's terms. You'll see context, work effort, business opportunity, alternatives, recommendation, and implementation plan. We're going to look at each of these in more detail. The context sets the stage for your business case. This is one of the most important sections, along with financials. Think of it like having a really good first sentence when you write a novel. If you don't grab the reader's attention quickly, they may move on. The same is true with presenting your business case. Think of it like a marketing pitch to the executive and make them excited about your proposal. You need to identify the value for the organization. This is done at a high level, with details later in the presentation or in an accompanying document. At this point, you're trying to capture interest. You also need to identify the audience or who the business case will impact. This could be people, organizations, or systems. You need to have a very clear goal or what you want to achieve through the business case. The next section of the business case is the business opportunity. This section answers the question, what is the objective? The opportunity provides the rationale for the business case, as well as background on the issue or reason for the business case. When you look at the history and what is contributing to the cause of the issues that caused you to look into making changes, it's important that you get to the root causes rather than just document what the outcome of those issues are. For example, people not being productive when working on their PCs in the morning is not a business opportunity. The cause of the issue should be identified. So in this case, the PCs are so old that it takes them 40 minutes to boot up in the morning. Changing the PCs out to newer models to better support the staff is a business opportunity. When you document the opportunity, you also need to quantify the magnitude of the issue. This may involve timelines, schedule, budgets, or limits. it's important to note that these measures are not measures of the issue that exists. These measures should quantify the business case. So, in the case of PCs, it could be the scope includes all of the HIM and HRT staff. New PCs will be purchased within 2 months of approval by the CIO. The project will include installation of all PCs within 3 weeks of delivery, including time to set up and test the PCs. Full deployment of all PCs will be complete within 6 months of the business case approval and at a maximum cost of $100,000. The business case will also describe the end objectives and metrics. Metrics will often include things such as what cost reductions will happen. As in our example above, it may include things like coders will gain back 40 minutes per day of productive coding time. One of the key components of the business opportunity is to state your goal and to do so succinctly. This will be the key message that the executive and the management takes away. Work effort documents who will participate in the project at a high level. Additionally, it will outline who has what high-level responsibilities or tasks. In project work, a document called a RASIC chart is often used. RASIC stands for Responsible, Approve, Support, Inform, Consult. The chart will list high-level tasks and job roles. It can be used to show who has what role for each task. It's a very helpful tool when developing your business case as well. There's an example of a RASIC chart on the next slide. In addition to individuals, the business case should also identify groups that are impacted. These may be within or outside of your organization. Especially when working on projects that have interoperability to other organizations, these outside organizations must be included in your business case. The business case should include a framework for a communication strategy. At this point, you won't have done full development on any of these, but outline at a high level what you will do. In the PC example, the framework may include things such as organization-wide announcement at the business case signing, HIM, HRT stakeholder communication, HIM, HRT pre-implementation communication, or go-live information. Similarly, you should have a high-level idea of what the schedule will be. This would be at the milestone level. You won't have detailed tasks identified yet or know how long each task will take until the business case has been approved and you can do detailed planning and know what resources are available. This schedule is based on post-approval timelines. Rather than give specific dates, they will be termed as so long after approval. In the PC example, you may have milestones like purchase orders will go out 60 days after approval, or all PCs will be implemented within 6 months of approval. Before we move on to alternatives, here's an example of a RASIC chart. As you can see, it lists the high-level milestone-type tasks. This is the level you would typically see in a business case. At the bottom in red are descriptions of the levels of responsibility. If you look at the first task, Initiate SDP Express Project, you'll see that the CM lead has an S in the box, meaning that the person has a role that supports the responsible person. The project manager has an R in the box and is thus responsible to ensure the work is completed. The senior manager has an A, which means that person must formally sign off on the work. Once the RASIC is completed, all stakeholders get a copy so that everyone is aware of exactly what the responsibilities are. For each alternative that you've identified, 2 at a minimum, document the benefits, costs, assumptions, constraints, and risks. While you need to document as many alternatives as you consider, one alternative that is often left out is the status quo, or the do-nothing alternative. Benefits should include metrics, as they will be more readily understood and accepted. Metrics should include high-level numbers in the main presentation, for example, reduce overtime costs by 25%, and will generally have an appendix where reviewers can go to see the actual calculations or what went into determining that number. When looking at costs, make sure to include any additional tasks which will be required by the new process. They must also be costed and included when developing your financial approach. There are many financial measures which are used in the business case, and we'll look at one of them, return on investment, in the next slide. Other costing measures include net present value, or NPV, internal rate of return, or IRR, and payback period. Depending on your organization, you may need to develop some skill in generating these calculations yourself, or your organization may provide you with a standard template that's always used. Some organizations, generally the larger ones, turn the work over to their financial department, and you just provide the raw numbers and they do the calculations for you. Accurately identifying assumptions is a critical success factor. Alternatives may share assumptions, that being the assumption is true for each alternative, or they may be specific to one of the alternatives, or a combination of the two. These assumptions should relate to business need. When looking at the alternatives, you need to identify the trade-offs. It's rare that one solution will address all of your needs. You should evaluate how compatible each alternative is with the original goals. Constraints to the project's success must be identified in the business case. Constraints can include staffing, budget, technology issues, government policies, available resources, etc. These need to be identified and analyzed to determine what their impact will be and what costs could be involved in minimizing the constraints. We've talked previously about risk management. At this stage, you need to identify risks which will exceed the threshold as set by the organization. There may be different risks associated with each alternative. As well, you should examine the risk involved with not doing the project. Another area not specifically called out under alternatives, but which must be considered, is that of the organization support and culture. The implementation will be unsuccessful to some degree or may fail outright if the organization does not accept the changes. The business case should include how to inform staff and engage those who will be involved. Stakeholder engagement informs those whose work will be impacted by the potential change, acts as a way of gathering support, and provides consistent messages. At the end, you should have a preferred alternative. This will become your recommendation for the business case. The recommendation should also include information on how to proceed. This may be along the lines of, approve the business case within 2 months in order to be able to obtain preferred pricing. While this course doesn't include in-depth information about financial analysis, some information will be provided on one of the most common financial measures, ROI, or return on investment. ROI is a metric that allows you to evaluate the financial consequences of an investment or action. Sometimes it's referred to as a measure of profitability. ROI looks simple, but it can be difficult to determine what to include in gains and investment costs. You need to carefully consider all of the financial implications of your suggested alternatives. Gains are generally in the form of savings to the organization. Cost reductions can be direct savings, which include things like elimination of legacy systems, reduction in contractual support, disposal of old facilities, or a variety of other cost reductions and benefits. They may also be indirect savings, which are harder to quantify. Examples of these include increased employee proficiency or reduction of development time. Investment costs include one-time costs such as expenses, capital expenditures such as hardware, software, and buildings, consulting fees, travel expenses, training development and delivery. Investment costs also include recurring costs for ongoing operations, maintenance, and support, as well as any depreciation or amortization for assets. In complex business environments, it may be more difficult to match specific returns to specific costs, making ROI a poorer choice for evaluation. The simple ROI formula is gains minus investment costs divided by the investment costs. Let's take a look at an ROI example. If you were investigating a new system that cost $500,000, but which would deliver $700,000 in value over the next 5 years, the ROI would be $700,000 minus $500,000 divided by $500,000 for an ROI of 40%. Organizations generally set a target for ROI, and any business cases which don't meet the pre-established ROI goal will not be considered. At the end, you should have a preferred alternative. This will become your recommendation for the business case. The recommendation should also include information on how to proceed. This may be along the lines of approve the business case within 2 months to obtain preferred pricing. The implementation plan is the final step in CHIMA's approach. This step is important since projects are meaningless if they can't actually be implemented. The plan will be at a very high level as you are not far enough along to be able to report details yet. However, you should include both checkpoints and milestones. Checkpoints serve as feedback to senior management and staff, and milestones help monitor the implementation and evaluate success. The implementation plan will typically include project phases such as initiation, planning, execution, and close. Initiation includes early steps which are taken following approval of the business case before a full project plan is developed. These could include defining of terms of reference for the project team, recruiting the team, establishing project management structures and governance. Planning details the major project tasks and milestones. These could include acquisition of products, testing, deployment, schedules, etc. Also included are monitoring mechanisms such as quality and communications plans and financial management. Execution details the approach to delivering and may include communication, training, and the approach to deployment. The last phase, project close, includes activities to complete the project, such as final documentation, stakeholder debriefing, and lessons learned. There are a number of considerations both in the preparation and presentation of the business case. When preparing, ensure you get a formal report ready to support the presentation, even if it's not requested. To be successful, you need to be prepared to answer any questions, and having this information ready in advance provides you with an understanding of the more in-depth background knowledge. As well, if the review committee requests more information for evaluation following your presentation, you come across as professional and prepared if the document is ready and can be distributed immediately. Keep in mind that there's only time in the presentation for highlights. You need to give the review committee enough to enable them to decide if they want to move forward. Often these committees are reviewing many proposals in a time period, so keep to their guidelines for time. Develop your materials with consideration to who the audience will be. If you know that there are certain areas that are hot points, take advantage of that in developing your presentation. These are usually presented to executive and senior management, so you need to use a formal, professional approach and avoid slang or technical jargon. Be sure to review the presentation with the team who provided input and the key stakeholders. They're more likely to identify any errors you may have missed. Make sure to circulate the presentation to the committee in advance. This will let them have looked it over and be familiar with the material. They may also then be able to come prepared with questions. This is a formal presentation, and you want to be able to give a good image. It's imperative that you practice the presentation multiple times so that you are comfortable with the content. Review the detailed supporting documentation so you're familiar with it, and be prepared for questions. Think up questions you're likely to be asked, and be prepared with those answers. In some cases, having a hidden supporting slide you can show in response to an anticipated query can be beneficial. When presenting, provide comprehensive information without excessive numbers, charts, graphs, or verbiage. The goal is to provide a clear and concise vision for where you want to go. Ensure that your documentation has reference material that will support it in the appendix or in hidden slides. Recommendations should clearly indicate which of the alternatives is the preferred one. Your presentation should be focused towards enhancing its visibility and desirability. Write your executive summary last, as it summarizes the entirety of your presentation in just a few sentences. The next example of a business case we're going to look at comes from eHealth in the Central East Lynn. What we're going to examine is the table of contents from one of their business cases, so you can get an idea of the kinds of areas that are included in a larger, more complex project like this one. So in the Central East Lynns business case, they have the executive summary, which includes the environmental scan, situational assessment, and stakeholder assessment. They then continue on with the desired outcome. This includes the need, problem, or opportunity statement, a vision statement, their goals, objectives, and performance measures. It also includes alignment of goals to organizational strategies and what decisions are required at the end of the business case. In the options analysis section, there is options identification, analysis of any programs and policies, infrastructure analysis, the cost-benefit analysis, impact analysis, decision factors, and a comparison of the various options. In addition, they then continue on to give recommendations, and those recommendations include the constraints and the assumptions. Similar to CHIMA's approach, there is a section for implementation strategy. However, they don't break it down in detail in their business case, as that information is contained in another document, the project charter. And finally, they include acceptance and sign-off. In a case of a large complex project like this one, there is not a single sign-off that is required. They actually break this one down by different areas or organizations who will need to be involved and who will need to sign off. The third example we're going to look at is an HIMSS business case example. It's a template that was developed by HIMSS to be used for public health departments, and it allows organization and presentation of the parameters for an HIE project to the health development leaders. There's also a link included to this template in case you want to use it at some point in the future. This is the HIE, or Health Information Exchange, project business case template. One of the things you'll immediately notice is that it does not contain information fully filled out as it would be when you've completed doing a business case. For example, you'll see the Insert Organization Name and Date tag, and what this lets you do is fill out the template with specific information for your organization and for your project. The first slide is the project name and description. You include the name of the project and a high-level description of the functional capabilities that the project will create and the solution that will be used. For the project stakeholders section, health department programs or administrative functions that will use or provide information are listed. Other public health stakeholders who are affected by the information exchange are also included. Numbers of physicians, clinics, hospitals, labs, pharmacies, or other stakeholders who would provide or receive information are estimated, and they're broken out by an initial cross-section of stakeholders and a 5-year estimate, which is needed for reporting on 5-year financial and tests of progress. The next section is business goals addressed. So the goals must be specifically outlined in this section, and they use a Health Department HIE goal matrix to help complete this. As well, the relationship to the Health Department priorities is outlined, and this links HIE goals to Health Department planning and priorities from community health improvement plans and departmental strategic plans or other sources. The next section is the business impact at the program level. This describes how the tasks and workflows of different health department programs will be affected. It includes expected improvements, and if possible, metrics should be included, indirect impacts, such as relationships with partners or other community capabilities that will be enabled, impacts on funding and accreditation requirements, any necessary program changes, such as workforce training or managing dual or multiple systems, and necessary stakeholder changes. What would other stakeholders be asked to do differently? The next area of business impact that is considered is the financial one. This includes capital investments, one-time costs, estimated annual costs, which are broken down over a 5-year period, estimated annual economic benefits, again broken down over 5-year periods, and at the end of 5 years, with the projected number of exchange partners, information such as the total cost of ownership, the return on investment, and did or will the investment pay back. The alternatives considered are also documented, and if one HIE option was chosen over all the others, you should describe each of them and why it was selected in terms of the program impact and the financial impact. Risk management is broken down into 2 sections. The first is the HIE and HIO. When looking at risk management, you need to describe the risks using the HIE Service Provider Risk Assessment. You'll see in this slide it also documents a number of specific risks that should be considered when looking at this area. As well, you should document proposed actions to mitigate each identified risk. And there's a special note that if actions have a program or financial impact, you must be sure that this is reflected in the earlier impact slides as well. The other area of risk management that is considered is the health department. Risks are described using the health department risk assessment, and risks may include things like the capability to work with the HIE organization, financial and technical capabilities, information stewardship capability, and the capability to adjust workflows to receive benefit. Proposed actions to mitigate each identified risk should be included. And there's a special note that if actions have a program or financial impact, that they must be reflected in the earlier impact slides as well. In the summary of this template, they describe who has reviewed and approved the descriptions and assumptions that were presented in the deck. And this includes affected program leadership and staff, HIE/HIO leadership, other public health stakeholders, external stakeholders such as exchange partners, and financial and information officers. At the end of the presentation is the conclusion section, and this is where you get your final opportunity to influence the executive. The conclusions for this template include the net value of the project, and look at how beneficial is the net projected program impact, how beneficial is the net projected financial impact, and do unmanaged risks outweigh the benefits. It includes a recommendation and areas for discussion, such as challenging cost and benefit assumptions and the adequacy of the risk mitigation. In conclusion, we've taken a look at strategic planning for IM and IT, and we've looked at how to develop a business case, primarily from the CHIMA perspective, but we've also taken a high-level look at how eHealth and the Central East LHIN do their business case development, as well as how the template looks for the HIMSS Public Health. Homework listed here is actually just a review of the content that's covered. Portions of this are in Chapter 8 on pages 131 to 133 and Chapter 11 from pages 188 to 189. As well, a significant amount of the work comes from the Writing a Business Case Professional Practice Brief from CHIMA, and that's PPB 0020.09, and it is posted up into D2L if you want to look at it for further review.